everybody. Welcome back to the Spinoff. Today, I am with a very special guest. As you can see by the new marquee here, my guest today is a comedian, writer, producer, director, Adam Freeman. Thank you so much for joining me today, sir.
Oh, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. So, I mean, looking at your IMDb right off the bat, it's a stellar career, honestly. Over 25 years experience in the TV business. And you've done shows, you've worked on shows like the Hatfields and Mccoys, which was a huge hit for the History Channel. You worked on Gene Simmons' Family Jewels, which I watched back in the day when it was on. Amazing show. You also worked on TRL, Total Request Live, which was an amazing show, and it was a huge part of my life growing up. So, I mean, what is it like to make it doing shows like these, especially when these are well-known and hit shows? What is it like?
It feels lucky, to be honest, because you have very little control over, all you can do is the best job you can do. And everybody that works in any creative industry, I think, has projects that they're super proud of that no one has ever heard of, projects that they're embarrassed of that everybody has heard of, and everywhere, in between. So I've been lucky to work on some shows that were hits. But if you look at my IMDb credits, which are like 70 or 80 long, like you just named 3 or 4 of them, like the other 70 people haven't heard of.
So it's an impressive lineup. It really is.
Thank you. But it's a crapshoot, really. And it's like, and when something like, TRL, for example, like that is just being in the right place at the right time. That the success of that show was just the perfect storm of the times, the music scene, the fandom, so it's like I was the showrunner of that show for 1,000 episodes or so, and some other super talented friends of mine did it before me and did it after me, but none of us can take credit for that show. That was just like lightning in a bottle, really.
Yeah, TRL was something. I mean, it is almost where you went to see music videos anymore on MTV. And I mean, the guests that you guys had come on were amazing. Everything just kind of fit. You're right there on Times Square. I mean, it was a beautiful setup, and just to know that you worked on that is amazing. So, is there any like certain guests that there ever were on TRL that just maybe you were starstruck by from the very first sight?
There's one. I could tell you one story in particular because I'm not a real. I know this sounds like such a BS line. I'm not really impressed by celebrity. I think I was earlier in my career, but then you have enough bad experiences that by the time I got to TRL, I actually most of the time interacted with the guests as little as possible because it was just an annoyance. And when you're trying to produce a TV show dealing with the egos and stuff, and that's not to make a blanket statement that they were all jerks, but with them comes their managers, their publicists, if there are, there's a movie rep there or a record label person. So most of the time I had my producers deal with them. There were a few times that, I kind of saved myself to be the bad cop that would come in if the producers, needed my backup. But there were a few times, I'll tell you one story, because this is one of the few times I can say that I was completely manipulated and played, and while it was happening I completely knew that it was happening. So we had Jennifer Lopez on the show one day, and she was launching a fashion line, and she had brought models on, and we were going to do a little runway thing. And when you're doing a live show, any show, you do a format and you leave X amount of time for everything. So we had like 7 minutes to do this thing, and we figured out that would we'd be able to do like 3 models. So she showed up with 7 models.
Oh no.
And she insisted on there being 7 models. And I was hearing all this through my producers because they were going back and forth between, and I was like, we don't have time. We only have 3. And they come back, no, she's insisting on 7. I was like, tell her 3. They come back insisting on 7. Finally, they were like, well, she wants to talk to you. I was like, okay. And, I was known for always being respectful, but not caving in or being manipulated by talent. So I went into the green room and she sat me down, and she put like her knees against my knee, and she takes my hand in her hand and she goes, Adam, I really, really need these these 7 models to walk because I have 7 looks. It's really important. I said, we only have time for 3. She's like, Adam, it would really mean a lot to me. So I walk back into the control room and they go, what happened? I go, we're doing 7 models. and it was just, it was one of the few times like, and she was a little bit of my celebrity crush at the time anyway. It was one of the few times like, I was like, it was kind of like Obi-Wan, like these aren't the droids you're looking for. And while it was happening, I knew that it was happening, but I was like, okay, yeah, well, and we did 7 models.
And you pulled it off then.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about live TV is you don't do the show every day because you're ready. Like we were on whatever time our time slot changed so much, but I think like most of the time we're on at 3:30. When it hit 3:30, you're on the air. Whether you're standing there in your underwear or you have U2 on the roof ready to play, like you're going. And at 4:30, when the show's over, it's over. So you get cut off mid-sentence if you're not done. So yeah, we fit it all in, but it was tight, but it was funny, and it was, it's something I can obviously joke about because I just, I knew, and if you're gonna get played by someone, Jennifer Lopez is a good person to get.
Oh, absolutely. I would. Hey, if anybody, I'll take that anytime. I'd definitely be okay with it. All right, exactly. So I suppose on the other side of that spectrum, as maybe even without naming names, what was maybe the least desirable time you had on the show?
On Total Request Live?
Yeah.
The least desirable. It's so fun. It's funny because if you asked me while I was producing the show, I'd probably give you a list a million miles long. And now that I am so far removed from it, like only really even the crappy times, like I still kind of look back at fondly, and I know that sounds like a BS answer. I mean, we had guests that were jerks. We had major celebrities show up drunk, Ooh. We had one of the most famous episodes I was there for was Mariah Carey unfortunately had a mental breakdown live on our show, which was pretty well documented, and I think she was hospitalized after that. And that was in the moment, it was incredibly frustrating from a TV perspective, but then once you step back and we had a couple of days and we watched, it just felt horrible from a human perspective. We didn't realize what was going on with her at the time. We just thought maybe she was, she was a little tipsy or she was whatever, but it turned out to be something more serious. 9/11 was really, really difficult because it's like, how do you come back from that and have fun and celebrate? But I'm really proud of how we handled that. And we really turned it into like an open kind of town hall meeting for kids all around the country to call in. But in retrospect, I've done so many crappier things since then that with distance, I look back at TRL really only fondly. I mean, it was making TV at a super young age with some of my best friends. It really was kind of like the lunatics running the asylum, and and like I said, it's really like when you are in the center of a pop culture phenomenon like that, like all you can do is really just enjoy the ride, and it's just an amazing thing to behold. And it's not a lie. It's good to be number one. It's good to be, it's good. It's, you know what I mean? It's like, cause everybody comes to you. So, so you could pick up the phone and go, no, I don't want Tom Cruise Tuesday. I want him Wednesday, because it's not me. It's not any one person. It's the hit show and they need you. Conversely, I've done talk shows where I've been like begging the cousin of the star of Dawson's Creek to come on and they're saying no. So it's like, what can you do for them? But TRL was great. It was a great experience. That's
kind of how I work this show. I mean, I aim for some high name people if they ever get a hold of me. So
and you get me. You aim high and you get me.
No, you got to realize when I saw your IMDb, my eyes seriously lit up. I was like, look at everything this guy's. I even showed my wife. I'm like, honey, you got to look at this, baby. This is amazing.
Oh, it's nice of you. Thank you.
So, okay, and moving on. The Hatfields and McCoys. It was only a 3-episode miniseries on History Channel. It was amazing. What was it like to work with a cast like that and to put a show like that together?
that was an amazing thing to be a part of. The real credit for that goes to the a good friend of mine and the CEO of my company at the time, man named Leslie Greif. That was, you always hear people talking about how they have like their passion projects. Hatfields and McCoys was Leslie's passion project for decades. He's an old school Hollywood guy. He was one of the original Sweat Hogs. He created Walker Texas Ranger. He's like a real, character and legend in TV. So he had always wanted to do this project. He had it set up at like 5 different networks. I think the first time he had it set up was in the 70s with like Burt Reynolds and Burt Lancaster playing Hatfield and McCoy. And things fall through for a variety, of reasons. So then he and a great writer named Daryl Fetty kept working on the script for our company, and we all helped shape it and mold it, but it was really their baby. And then what there are people out there that do everything by the book, and there are people out there that just break the rules and try crazy stuff. And when you break the rules and try crazy stuff, if it doesn't work, you're labeled a troublemaker. And can we curse on here or no?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, you're labeled a troublemaker or an asshole. If it has a happy ending, you're labeled a genius.
Yeah.
And so what Leslie and my company did was completely unsolicited. We got the script to Kevin Costner, and they didn't ask to read it. And somehow it got to Kevin, and somehow Kevin read it, and he got it on a Friday, and he called us on a Sunday and said, "I will do this under the one condition that you don't change a word." And once Kevin Costner was on board, and it was funny, the History Channel, who were great friends of ours, but we and Leslie and my company Think Factory, we were such a dog with a bone and so annoying with them that what they pretty much said to us was like, "Look, we will do this miniseries, but you got to get a big star." And they said that basically thinking they're never going to get a big star, and we're going to come back and we're going to, like, no disrespect to like Mario Lopez, but we're going to come back and be like, we got, whomever to be in it. And then we called them on Monday and said, "We got Kevin Costner." And they were like, "No, you didn't." We're like, "Yeah, we do. We have Kevin Costner." And you saw the look on their face because suddenly they were like, "Fuck, we have to make this now, don't we?" And here's another bit of genius is they only greenlit 2 parts. They wanted it to be 4 hours. But we had written a 6-hour script. So when Costner said, "I'll do this, but you can't change a word," we had it written into his contract that we couldn't change a word, which meant that we have 6 hours of content here. I guess we got to do 3 parts. And it was kind of like a backwards way of making them do. And it was a fight to do 3 parts. And then, of course, it became like at the time, it was the number 1, 3, and 4 viewed miniseries of all time. And they were very happy that we did a third.
Well, I would think they'd be really happy about giving you that 3rd part because, like you said, it ended up being a huge hit for that channel. But
it was super expensive, and they hadn't done something like that at that time, and it's a gamble. It's you're asking for millions and millions of people's of a corporation's dollars. So that was just a great thing to be a part of, but the real credit really goes obviously to Leslie Greif and to Daryl Fetty and to the people that wrote it. But but again, it's like no one could have watched. Like it's a crapshoot. TRL went on for a year and a half every day in that studio when nobody watched, and then it's always like that. That overnight success that took years in the making. Like, everyone was like, "Wow, how come anyone hasn't done Hatfields and McCoys before?" And it's like, well, we've been trying to since 1973. Nobody wanted to do it.
And what's funny is it was so good is when I noticed the year it came out, to me, it felt like it only came out maybe a couple years ago. It came out in 2012.
Yeah.
I mean, does not seem like it's been 9 years since that has been out. That's how good of a testament it is to how well it was written, how well it was directed, produced. I mean, everything you guys did with that, the casting, amazing job.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, we're really proud of it. And once Costner came on board, then suddenly, people other actors wanted to be, a part of it. And obviously, the late Bill Paxton was amazing. Just everyone. You look at that. I still can't believe we got that cast. It was, again, it's like when lightning in a bottle. It's like you don't get that every time.
Absolutely. Yeah, and you're absolutely right on that. It's something you try to recreate. If you force it, it ends up just being the worst thing you could have put together.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, all right. I also noticed in your bio, and this was extremely interesting. You were the youngest showrunner with the launch of On Air with Ryan Seacrest. Now, how was that experience, and how was it working with Ryan Seacrest?
Ryan is great. Ryan's a total pro, one of the nicest guys in the business I've ever met. He's loyal. He's a great guy. The show was very, very, very challenging. I was running Total Request Live, and at the time, I think American Idol was in its second season, and Fox decided to give Ryan a daytime talk show. And it's very easy right now to go, yeah, Ryan Seacrest. But you got to remember, back then, Ryan Seacrest wasn't Ryan Seacrest.
Yep.
The show was, the American Idol was huge, but people didn't really know who Ryan was. He was only on local radio in LA. Nobody knew who Ryan was. So the syndicated talk world is very, very incestuous. It's a very, very small group. And if you look at all the executive producers of all the shows you love, or didn't love, but you just look at the daytime shows, from the court shows to Ricky Lake, to Sally Jesse, to Maury, to whomever, you'll see about 7 or 8 names that have produced all of those shows. And they wanted On Air with Ryan Seacrest to be different. And from what I understand, inside Fox, they kept saying, we want it to be like TRL, but for like women in their 30s. We want it to be for people that watch daytime. We want it to feel like TRL. We want it to be fun. We want it to be live. And they kept saying that, and they kept saying that. And then they kept going to all the usual suspects in the syndicated world. And they just weren't impressed with them. They felt like it was going to be more of the same thing. And then somebody at Fox, it was two amazing people, a woman named Erica Lewis, another woman named Elaine Brooks. One of them said, well, why don't we just find out who does TRL? And they found out, and they found me. So I was doing TRL, and they started kind of courting me. And I was not looking to move to Los Angeles. I am a New Yorker through and through. I had been to Los Angeles tons of times on work, and I hated it. But at the same time, I had a brand new baby. My wife, who was also a showrunner at MTV, we were quickly realizing that we could not both work in daily live television and have a child, because, daycare and the hours and everything. So, it really came down, I sound like a whore. It came down to money. It was like, well, my wife and I were joking. We're like, okay, well, look, because every time, you get the best offers in life when you can say no, right? If you're starving and you have to feed your family and you're homeless, someone offers you $1 an hour, you're going to take it because you have nothing in your pocket. But when you have a good job and you have a 401k and you have vacation and you have all this stuff and you have the ability to say no, that really puts the onus on the pursuing party of like, okay, well, how badly do they want you? So they made me an offer, and I was like, that's not enough for me to move to LA. And they made me another offer. I was like, that's not enough. And my wife and I, joking around in our head, was like, all right, if they get to X, then it's just, and X, I should say, X is not a hard number to get because MTV pays you like MTV pays you nothing. So, but to us at the time as young parents, X was a lot of money. And we were like, okay, if they ever get to X, then we have to go to LA. It would be stupid to turn that down, because for us at the time, it was life-changing money. And so I just kept saying no. And then one day I came home to my wife and I was like, they got to X. I think we're moving to LA. And after 11 years, I gave my notice at MTV, and I left TRL and came to LA, and we launched On Air with Ryan Seacrest. And it was a huge eye opener. And it was a huge, it was a very, very humbling experience, right? Because I never thought that I was responsible for the success of TRL, but I had gotten very used to, as I said earlier, just fielding requests. Like I said, no, I don't want Tom Cruise on Tuesday. I want Tom Cruise on Wednesday because you're number one and everyone comes to you. Well, suddenly I was launching a talk show with a guy that nobody knew, that had no track record, and I couldn't do anything for anyone. So I would call up the publicist that I said no to for Tom Cruise, and I'd be like, hey, can we take Tom Cruise on Friday? They were like, no. I could give you Tom Cruise's stuntman's nephew. And it was like, and it was just a real eye-opener because it was like, I didn't assume, but I had gotten so used to playing the game at a certain level. Suddenly I was like starting all over again.
Yeah.
And on top of that, there were several other shows launching at the same time. Ellen had just launched like a couple months earlier. And the Tonight Show obviously was in town with Jay Leno and everything. And a lot of those shows kind of ganged up on us, and they started telling celebrities if you went on that show, you couldn't be on their show. So we had celebrities going, I can't, because if I go on Ryan Seacrest, I'll never be on the Tonight Show again. And it was like, the Tonight Show, what have you. It's like, I can't take that chance. And then what they started to do was, which was really dirty pool, was we were live every day at noon, LA time. So we could be live in New York at 3 p.m. And the other shows started to really take advantage of us being live. And by that, I mean, we went live at noon. At 11:45, they would call up Brian and say, oh, we know you're doing Ryan Seacrest in 20 minutes, but you're not doing the Tonight Show tonight if you do that show. And they would do that very purposely, so we would have people cancel on us like minutes before we went live. So, I talked earlier about you go live because it's time to go live, not because you're ready. So imagine having an entire segment or two segments built around a celebrity. We're going to do this interview. We're going to go outside and we have this big set built. We're going to play this game and we have fans lined up, and we're going to send someone on a plane to see the premiere of their movie here. And then 5 minutes before, they cancel. So it was a real eye opener. It was the first time I really had to deal with a lot of the politics, and stuff. And the first time I felt like competition. I remember calling up the then showrunner of the Tonight Show with Jay Leno, and I sent her all this research, and I was like, look, here's proof. Like, we've had all this research done. Our audience at 3 p.m. and your audience at 11:30 at night have like a 2% overlap. Like, if somebody sees The Rock on our show, they are not going to not watch it on the Tonight Show. Please don't do this to us. And her answer was, if you're on TV, you're my competition. And she hung up on me. And I was like, okay, and it's like, okay, now I'm playing in the big leagues, and I'm really proud of that show. I think it was really ahead of its time. I think if it launched 3 or 4 years later, when Ryan Seacrest was Ryan Seacrest, I think it would have done really well. I see a lot of what we did on that show in other shows. I see, you and no disrespect, because I'm a huge fan, but you watch the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, and he's doing TRL games. He's doing Ryan Seacrest game. Every guest he has on, he's doing some kind of fun game and activity. And that was what we did on TRL. And he's even doing some of the same exact games, which is fine. That's what, it's flattering to be an influence, but it's funny that, at the time, Jimmy Fallon he used to play Carson on SNL, and his tagline was like, hi, I'm Carson Daly and I'm a humongous tool. And now he's pretty much doing Carson Daly's show every night at 11:30, and he's great at it.
Yeah.
He's one of the most talented guys. I mean, I don't know what the guy can't do, but I see the DNA of that show and what I brought from TRL to Ryan Seacrest. I see it in a lot of, other shows. But it was really tough. It was every day was a fight. Every day it went from saying no to Tom Cruise to begging guests to come on. Matter of fact, one time one of our guests canceled, and our stage manager, guy named John Stewart, not the John Stewart, John Stewart, John with an H.
Okay.
John Stewart was like, well, my daughter does some acting. We really need a guest. And we literally were like, get the stage manager's daughter. Now, the stage manager's daughter was a young woman no one heard of named Kristen Stewart. And she came on, and then she had just done Panic Room, but it hadn't come out yet. And then, of course, Twilight and everything else. But we were her first ever TV interview, literally because her dad called her and said, a major guest just canceled, get on your bike and pedal down to, to the studio and be a guest on the show. So it was rough, but so Ryan is great.
So one of you guys' first guests was a young Kristen Stewart?
She's not one of our first guests, but like 6 or 7 months in when we started to have people cancel on us. Yeah, she was our A guest one day, and we literally introduced her as our stage manager's daughter.
She may actually still get a kick out of that to this day, though.
Yeah, maybe. If she was a really cool kid. I say kid now, she's 30s, whatever. But she was at the time she was in her teens. She was you knew she was talented back then. We didn't know she was going to be this amazing superstar. But yeah, I mean, so it's a super long answer to an easy question, so I apologize, but it was rough. It was rough. But Ryan was amazing through all of it. He's one of the best people in the business, I think.
So how did you guys really handle that then when you would get cancellations like that just minutes before going on air and you're screaming? Were there ever times that you just couldn't get anybody? Or did you just say, to hell with it and throw somebody on camera?
Yeah, well, what you start doing was you start pre-producing 2 shows. You start going, okay, if I'm making up names, if Sarah Michelle Gellar shows up, it's this. If not, guess what? We're going to try to set the record for the biggest tic-tac-toe game out in the plaza. And it's like, and you have to have entire like backup, non-guest things. Or what we started to do, which ended up being a lot of fun, is we're like, okay, we're not getting these big A-list guests. So let's just book people that mean something to us, right? So I said earlier how I'm not impressed by celebrities, and I've met everybody, Tom Cruise, J-Lo, Mel Gibson, everyone, U2, everyone has been on TRL. But it's not exactly true. I do get starstruck, and you know who I get starstruck by? I get starstruck by Mr. T. I get starstruck by Adam West and Burt Ward from the original Batman. Yes. And so what we started doing was we started booking like nostalgic people,
Retro
so like
stars.
one of the things that we did was there was a thing called the Pocket Mr. T that had just come out, where you could just, press the button. It was like, I pity the fool, right? And Ryan had one day and he loved it. And he was like, check this out. And he was playing with it on the show. So I got this idea. I was like, okay, this is what we're going to do. So the next day we were like, Ryan, we're going to have you play with the thing on air again. And he was like, great. We didn't tell him 2 things. 1, we took the batteries out of it. And 2, we got Mr. T. And I had Mr. T backstage with me with a microphone. And when Ryan pressed it, and at first it didn't work, he shot me this look, panic, like, oh my God, I'm on live TV and it's not working. And then over the PA, you heard, I pity the fool. And he was like, and he hit again. And then we had Mr. T walk out.
Oh. And
it was like, so what we started to do was produce the show for us. One of our writers, one of my good friends, her name was Laura Slobin, grew up a humongous Rick Springfield fan.
Oh.
She was the biggest, Rick Springfield, Jesse's Girl.
Yes.
He was on General Hospital. When she was a teenager and a tween, Rick Springfield was her end all be all. So what did we do? We got Rick Springfield to go in a limo and pick her up at work in the morning. And we sent a camera crew. And remember, we had to be at work at like 5 a.m. So like at 4:45 in the morning, we have a camera crew and Laura's doorbell rings and she opens it and there is Rick Springfield and a limo going like, I'm going to be your ride to work today. And she burst out hysterically crying and he drove her to work. And then so she could be close to him, we put her desk physically on the stage so she could work while Rick was a guest on the show, so she could still be, and we just started to have fun. I mean, that's one of the things, I have to say, it's when you're not a success, when you're not a success and it starts to feel hopeless, there's a certain freedom in that. There's a certain like, what the fuck, like when you're the number one show, you're like, we're number one, we got to stay number one. If you dip a tenth of a point in the ratings, you're going to get this and that. When no one's watching, you're like, all right, who gives a shit? Let's just do it. And we just started to have fun and just do crazy shit, you know? So we made it fun in the end, but the first 9 months or so were torture
And
on that
see,
show.
that's got to be rough. Like you said, it basically feels like you're being almost poached of your guests. So I mean, the fact that you guys were able to roll with that for that long at the beginning of the show and still make it work, that's a hell of a testament to you guys
Well, you
as
don't
a
thank you,
team.
but you don't have a choice. Like I said, the show is going on the air, so you have to do a show. There's no like, oh, we're not ready today. So it's you get really creative when you have no options. You know.
All right. I was seeing also that you are an executive producer on What's It Worth with Jeff Foxworthy. Now,
Yeah.
I love stand-up comedy, obviously, and I grew up a Foxworthy fan. Ron White, all those guys from the South, they're hilarious. What's it like doing a show like that with Jeff Foxworthy?
Jeff, I'm going to sound like I'm feeding you a line, but Jeff is another one of those just amazing people.
Good.
Such a super nice guy. And that was a tough show because that was the first show that we produced during COVID.
Ooh.
That was when we sold the show to A&E. It was designed to be a big, huge live show once a week where people would bring down their items and they would and we would auction them live on the air. So the whole concept was that you could go on your cell phone, you can open up the What's It Worth app, you could watch Jeff on the show, and you could bid on, that Huskies, whatever you wanted to do. You could, and we were all set to do it, and then COVID hit, and we couldn't do TV production, let alone have a big circus tent in Atlanta with 500 people in it. So A&E came to us and they said, well, what small version of the show can you do? And they started, like, they needed programming, they needed to fill the slot, but we couldn't do that. And so what we finally is like, well, what we can't be live because that's, we don't have the crew to be able to do that. What we can do is we could, like, and you gotta remember, this is like April or March, like this is right when COVID hit. We're like, we could Zoom with Jeff from his house and he could talk to people and he could highlight their items and he could tell them what's it worth. We can't sell them.
Yep.
But we can, so then they thought, okay, well, let's do this show. And then we'll do this show during COVID. And then once COVID's over, we'll do the big show. And we were a little skeptical because we were like, well, if for any reason it doesn't do well, then why would they ever take the risk and do an even bigger, more expensive show? So we knew there was a lot on the line, but they really wanted to do it and we wanted to be good partners. And, so we did it. And I think the show was a lot of fun, but people weren't really, everyone was watching the news. Everyone was, searching the world in their Mad Max mobiles for toilet paper and stuff. So the show did okay, but and here, proof positive, we still couldn't do that big live show, so we would have still been waiting. But Jeff was awesome guy, because of my passion for comedy and stand up. I love doing shows and working with stand up comedians. So working with him on jokes and amazing. And Jeff is one of those guys that you just get exactly what you see. He was in his basement from his home in Atlanta and he was Zooming with people all around the country and they were showing him, here's my this and here's my that and here's my signed Hank Aaron baseball and whatever it was. And then we would like go to commercial and, I've done lots of talk shows. Some talk shows, it's like the minute you go to commercial, it's like, and we're clear. And it's like, and the host he kept talking to the people and like, oh, so what's your grandmother's name? And it was like, and we'd have to tell Jeff, we gotta, because he's a people person and he loves talking to people. And so he was just a dream. He was perfect.
That's great. Sometimes people aren't what they appear on TV or on radio. And when you hear that they're exactly how they portray themselves, that's like a breath of fresh air. And
it really is.
Really glad Jeff's that way because, like I said, Been a fan of his since I was a kid, and still a
Yeah.
fan of his. And to hear that remains that I'm a fan. So thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate it. Now, you brought up you doing stand-up comedy. I'm so glad you brought that up because that was next. Perfect segue. All right. I saw you listed as a comedian as well. And is that something that's a new venture for you, or is it something that's a passion that you do in your spare time?
That's a great question. It's a little of all of that. I've been obsessed with stand-up comedy for as long as I can remember. My dad was a huge comedy fan, and and as early as I can remember, I remember rating his record collection and listening to the Bill Cosby records and Robert Klein records. And even though in retrospect, I probably got 10% of the jokes,
Yep.
I was just enamored with someone getting up and speaking and everyone laughing. And then, I'm older than you, but when I was, a little kid and like HBO, cable first came out, there was all the young comedian specials and the Rodney Dangerfield specials and then obviously the Eddie Murphy specials and all that, George Carlin. And so I've always been obsessed with stand-up comedy. But because everyone that I admired were these legends, I always assumed, it would be like having an interest in basketball, but looking and going like, well, I'm never going to be Michael Jordan, so I can't play basketball. And it took me 40 something years to realize, well, no, you can put a hoop up in the backyard and play basketball. You're not going to be Michael Jordan, but you can go out and play. There's nothing stopping you from playing.
That's right.
You're not going to be the GOAT. So for the longest time, I looked at stand-up comedy as like performing stand-up, as that was something that like special people did, like magical, amazing, special people of which I am not their ilk. They do that. So I became the behind the scenes person. So in high school, I didn't audition for the school plays. I built the sets, Yeah. When it came to working in TV, I produced TRL. I wasn't a VJ, I did everything behind the scenes, but I've always been in love with stand-up, and I was always writing jokes and just putting them away. And then when I started working at MTV, and when MTV was mostly music and they had a lot of VJ talent, the two places that MTV used to go to find VJs where they either went to radio or they went to stand-up comedy, right? So they'd go get, Martha Quinn and Adam Hunter and those original VJs were all radio people. The second wave, they went and got Bill Bellamy, was a great stand-up comedian. They went and they got Pauly Shore, stand-up comedian. They got Carson Daly from radio. They got, so Damien Fahey from radio. They got Ed Marquez from comedy. They got,
Ricky Rackman would have been from radio, correct?
Ricky Rackman from radio. So it was always like radio or stand-up, because when you think about it, those are the two professions where you have to sit and fill time and talk and interact with people and put stuff in your own words and be entertaining. So it's natural. So I always used to gravitate towards the comedians, and because I felt like those were my people, and because I was such a student of stand-up comedy, I think the comedians liked me because they in me they recognized a real fan. It would be like, being a sports fan is like, are you just wearing the jersey because they were in the championship last year, or do you know all the stats? And you could tell who's a real sports fan and who's not. And they could tell, this kid knows his shit. So then I would write jokes for them. I started producing their VJ stuff. I did a bunch of specials with Pauly Shore and working with behind the scenes. I did a special with Weird Al that called Al TV that aired on MTV forever. Yep. A whole bunch of stuff. And so that kind of like scratched my itch. Like, okay, they're the performers and I'm writing the jokes and whatever. And then I got to do that more and more. And then I helped launch Chelsea Handler's first talk show. It was a show on E called The Chelsea Handler Show.
Yep.
And which later became Chelsea Lately, which I didn't continue on with Chelsea Lately, but this was this first show that we did. And I ran that show and wrote for her, and it ended up, I wrote some stuff for her for her act outside, and I would help her with her Tonight Show bits and stuff like that. And again, it was like so I was getting closer, like I was working with bigger fish, but just always. And then finally, I don't know what did it, but I remember it was New Year's Eve 2018 into 19. And I was like, okay, what resolutions am I going to make that I'm not going to keep this year? And I was like, you know what? In 2019, I am going to do stand-up. And I made myself that promise. I was like, even if I only do it once, I'm going to do it because I don't want to die knowing I never got on stage and did it. And so I got on stage and I did it, and it went horribly. And for some reason, I kept on doing it. And then all those years of studying stand-up, I guess I just learned a lot by osmosis, and things just started to click. And look, I can do it for 80 years and learn something new every, I have a long, long way to go. But it started to take off quicker than I thought it would. And I started performing at the store a couple times a month, and then other clubs, and so it's not a hobby. It's not it's more than a hobby, but it's not paying the bills. But it's a passion, and I get to do it, and I love doing it, and it's a great balance to my TV life because I don't need anyone's permission to do it.
No, not at all.
I don't have to pitch a show, convince a network to buy it, then convince them to give me the money for the budget, then come up with the creative, get 50 network executives to sign off on it, shoot it, edit it, have them give me notes on the edit. I come up with a joke in the car on my way to, the improv or ha-has, and I say it on stage. And if it's great, it's 100% because of me. If it sucks, it's 100% because of me.
Yep.
And it's been a great kind of creative outlet, and I love doing it. So it's been a lot of fun. It's been a pleasant surprise. I wish I had the balls to have started earlier, because I think of like, okay, well, what level could I have been at now if I started back then, But
that's exactly how I got a hold of you too. Is I was literally just scrolling through Facebook, just through timeline, and somehow, some way, one of your jokes popped up, and it had a picture of you on stage with the whole joke right next to it. And I read it, and I literally laughed out loud, and I said, okay, yeah, I got to try and get this guy. If something makes me laugh out loud just by reading it a first time, yeah, I'm a fan of yours.
Oh, well, that's what, laughter bonds people like that.
Yes.
I didn't get girls in high school because I was good looking. I got girls because I made them laugh. I avoided many a beatdown from bullies because I made them laugh. Like, laughter I was always known as like the funny guy. You know what I mean? And it's a huge, not to get all psychological, but it's a huge defense mechanism, and it's a huge crutch, good and bad. It's a good icebreaker, and it's a good, like, it endears you to people if they find you funny. If they don't find you funny, they think you're the most obnoxious fuck they ever met. Like, you're having me on the show because you thought that joke was funny. If people didn't find that joke was, the hate that it's funny because I put those things online to make myself laugh, to make people laugh, to make connections. Obviously, you're a perfect example of someone that read it and pursued me for this, which I'm grateful for. But there are a lot of, shocker. I know I'm breaking news here. There's a lot of haters on the internet that just like to be dicks. So
yeah, trolls, man, they're all over the place.
Yeah. So for every, so you had me on because you liked the joke. I've gotten death threats over some asshole in bumfuck wherever that didn't like the joke. So it's like, but it's a lot of fun. I'm having a lot of fun.
Well, you said you went through your first bomb the first time you went on, so you kind of got that out of the way, which is what a lot of comedians say is something that is important. You need to get that bomb out of the way. Now, with that being said, how was that feeling when you got that just roaring outburst of laughter from the entire crowd just off of one joke? What was that feeling like?
It was it was one of the greatest feelings in my life, because what happened was I was doing, when you start out, you do what's called open mics.
Yeah.
Where anyone, and when you do open mics, you see it's like going to the DMV. Like you see the entire range of the human condition, right?
Yeah.
You see people that you're like, wow, they really have a spark of something and they're going to be good. And then you're like, wow, that's a heroin addict that just roamed in off the street. And he or she can get up in front of the mic too. It's like, it's, all you have to do is put your name in a hat or however they work it. And most open mics are very, very unforgiving places, right? 99% of the people getting up there are not good, because they're either starting out or they'll never be good. Everyone is super nervous because they're waiting for their turn. The audience is only people, nobody pays money to go see an open mic. So the audiences are only made up of people waiting to go up. So while you're up there sweating your balls off doing your thing, I'm looking at my notes because I'm going up next. So I'm not paying attention to you. So you're performing to an audience of people with their heads down, or they're super, super cocky and they're like, yeah, motherfucker, make me laugh, because they think they're George Carlin, even though they're doing an open mic at some bar on a Wednesday at 2 a.m. So it's very, very unforgiving, and it's very hard to get laughs at an open mic. So I did 3 or 4 open mics and got almost no laughs. And I was really kind of despondent. And I was not despondent because I expected to be good immediately. It was because I couldn't tell what was wrong, because I had no barometer. I was like, okay, I'm not getting laughs. Am I not getting laughs because I'm not funny? Or am I not getting laughs because the audience isn't paying attention? Like, I had no baseline of, like, you know what I mean? I didn't know.
Yeah.
And then, like, after a month or two doing stand-up, I got the opportunity. I met a who's now a good friend, a guy named Vargas Mason, who books shows at the Comedy Store. And he invited me to do the store. And I was nervous as hell, because that's like the CBGBs of comedy. It's like that legendary stage. And I was like, yeah, I can't pass up this opportunity. So on a Friday night, I went and I did 6 minutes, and I killed. And after doing 3 or 4 open mics of literally not hearing a peep, like not getting one laugh,
just crickets,
to having this roar of laughter, I was like, okay. Like it was not only is it just an amazing feeling, but it was also like great validation, because it was like, okay, now I know I can make people laugh. Not every show is going to go as well as this, but I now know that I have the ability, or the potential to have the ability, to say some words and get a response from people, and that was the ego boost that I needed. And that changed everything for me, because now suddenly, even when I went back to open mics, I wasn't walking on stage like, oh, I hope this goes well. Whether I did well or not, I walked on the stage like I deserved to be there. And it was like, okay, motherfuckers, for the next 5 minutes, you're mine. And sometimes it went well, sometimes it didn't. But, it's you shoot that buzzer beater, you walk out on the court that next game feeling pretty good because of how you just left your last game, So, yeah. And I still bomb. Everybody bombs.
Yep.
But you realize that bombing is not the end of the world. It still does not feel good, and I would prefer for it never to happen again. But it's not the end of the universe.
And it's funny because I listen to I have Sirius XM on my car, and it's constantly tuned to either Comedy Roundup for Jeff and Larry, or it's Netflix is a Joke radio. And you will hear some very established comedians hit a joke, and you can tell there's that moan in the crowd. But they've got that ability to roll with that and be like, oh, what, did I hit a nerve? And is that something that has become easier to do when you get that, not really laughter, but kind of like the, ooh, not sure about that one? Has it become easier to roll with that and get the crowd back on your side?
I'm getting better at it, but that's like, those are the skills you acquire from just doing it,
Okay.
I'm not a huge sports guy, but I'll attempt to make a sports analogy, and you tell me if I sound just mentally insane. Okay. I think let's take a pitcher in baseball, right? When you first start pitching, when you're a kid, you think, I have to strike out every batter.
Absolutely.
Right? Every pitch needs to be a strike.
Yep.
Right? Every joke I tell needs to murder. And then as you get more experienced, you realize like, well, no, I'm going to make this guy hit into a double play, or I'm going to walk this batter and I'm going to strike out the next one. And not everyone is going to be a 500-mile-an-hour fastball down the middle. Okay, I'm going to let this guy pop up and whatever. And then I'm going to strike out the next guy. When you start comedy, you think every joke, this needs to be you just need to keep punching them in the face. Every joke needs to land. And then when you get more experienced, you start to realize like, okay, I'm going to hit him here. And then I'm going to test him here and see, do they go for this one or I get the moan? And I'm okay doing that because I know my next pitch is going to be more heat and I'm going to hit him again. Now that's a skill, and it's a skill that I am learning and I will forever be learning. But when you see the pros do it, when you're listening to the ones that they're the masters at it, they're testing, or some people, people like Dave Attell, people like Dave Chappelle, like they get off. They get off.
Don't care.
No, they get a perverse kind of thrill out of like pushing the audience to the edge and then seeing if they can get them back. I do not have the confidence to push the audience away. I want to take them all in my car home with me if I can. Like I don't have the luxury, the experience, or the success to be like, oh, I'm going to play with them for a while. Like, so I'm not trying to throw strikes every single time, but I'm trying to throw strikes 90% of the time.
That's a perfect analogy. You actually nailed that. That's exactly how you think of it. As a kid, if you're a pitcher, you want to throw strikes every one. But like you said, as you get older, you start to map the game out in your head farther. It's less and less about that joke hitting than the next one. It's more about, we'll set this up for the long run and we'll drive it home right at the end. So,
and it also depends too on how long your sets are. When you're an established comedian, when you're a headliner and you're doing a half hour, 45 minutes, you have that time to like, there's ebbs and flows in your set. If you're starting out and you're doing 2 minutes, you're doing 4 minutes, 6 minutes, you really don't have time to like lose them. You have to kill, like a man. Are you boxing for 12 rounds or are you boxing for 1 round? If you're boxing for 1 round, you better knock them out in that round. If you got 12 rounds, you got to pace yourself.
Exactly.
I'm just perfect. Full of the sports analogies.
Dude, you hit 2 of 2 already. It's amazing. All right. We'll start to wind it down a little. We talked about this before we started recording, and I wanted to bring this up because, obviously, still a wrestling fan. You worked on a project. Unfortunately, it's not coming to fruition, but it was called Big Show versus the World. For those of you that don't know, Big Show, WWE, the largest athlete in the world. If you don't know who he is, Google Big Show, you'll know. So this was a show I wish would have happened, and you said you got to work with Big Show directly. What type of an experience was that like with him? Because I've heard I have seen on video that he is just a giant teddy bear.
He is. He's a super, super nice guy. Really, really smart. I really did not know who he was before we worked together. The last wrestler I really remember watching was like Jimmy Superfly. Like I'm a few decades removed.
That's all right.
So I didn't really know his character. I didn't know his personality. So the man that I met was this giant man that walked into a conference room and shook my hand and was just really nice and really friendly and really smart, very, very business minded. He's very, very self-aware. He's very, he knows how people view him. He knows what people think his strengths are, what people think his weaknesses are. And he kind of gets off, now that he's so successful, he gets off playing against type, So at the time when we were developing this show, he was filming, it hadn't come out yet, he was filming a sitcom for Netflix.
Yep.
The Big Show. And he was having a blast doing it because he was playing against type. It was like, okay, everyone thinks he's going to be, the villain in the next whatever movie.
Oh, he was
But
hilarious.
no,
It was a great show.
He was a sitcom dad, you know?
Yep.
So this show that we developed was he is really, really interested, excuse me, and obsessed with like strange phenomena, you know, and he's obsessed with uh like unsolved mysteries and X-Files type stuff and everything. So the show that we were developing was a travel-based show where he was going to go around the world and hook up with local guides and explore these mysteries in these countries. The hanging forest in Asia. There were these huge jars of volcanic ash that I can't remember what country it was. It's maybe Taiwan. I can't remember where it was like ancient human bodies and nobody knows. There's no volcano near there. How did these volcanic ash with human bones? So it was kind of like a real life X-Files kind of thing. And we
Wow.
were super, super excited, and we developed the show together, and then we took it out and we pitched it everywhere. Him and my company and my partners at my company, Adam and Brian, and we pitched it everywhere. And you know, for every credit you see on my IMDb page, there's no exaggeration. 50 or 60 other projects that I've pitched that nobody bought. And unfortunately, that's one of the ones that nobody bought. They all liked him as a person. Every network had their own reason for not doing it. It's nothing personal. Like I said, they say no to 99% of the ideas that they're pitched. So that one ended up not happening, unfortunately, because I think it could have been a lot of fun, and I was looking forward to working with him more because he was a cool guy.
Now, is there ever a chance that this is something that could still happen? Maybe down the road, it could get greenlit by the network.
Look, me and my partners at Think Factory, the company that I'm part of, we our slogan is nothing is ever dead, and the reason nothing's ever dead is because times are always changing and appetites are always changing. Perfect example, right? I told you about Leslie Greif, who tried to sell Hatfields and McCoys since 1970. If the first time someone at CBS in 1974 told him no, we never would have had the Kevin Costner version.
Yep.
You know, so shows that we really believe in, they don't go in the trash. They go on the shelf because the networks, every 6 months, the appetite changes. You know?
Absolutely.
It's like, you know, you want to do a show about chess? No, why would anyone want to watch chess? 6 months later, Queen's Gambit is the biggest show. Who has a chess show? Anybody have a show on chess? You know what I mean? So things change. People, what usually happens is someone takes a chance, that show is big, and then everybody chases that trend. You know what I mean? So if Big Show if he made a movie that came out, if he did The Tooth Fairy or one of those types of movies tomorrow, and it made $1 gazillion, we would sell Big Show versus the World in 10 seconds.
Oh, guaranteed.
So I would, it's sitting there on the shelf. It's one of the ones that we know this would be a good show. It just has to be the right time. And all these network executives, they all play musical chairs in 6 months anyway. So in another couple months, the person that said no at this network isn't going to be there, and we'll go back. I've sold shows back to the same network 2 or 3 times to different people because they change. So I would love to do that show one day, and I wouldn't be surprised if you see it. I hope so, because he's a great guy.
I really hope so too. Big Show, Paul White, the man is funny, and like you said, he's nothing what you would expect in real life. He is very caring. He's gentle. I mean, the guy's hilarious. Like you mentioned, the show he had on Netflix, the Big Show show. I watched it. I watched every episode, and it was hilarious. I thought it was some of the best comedic work he had done as far as his acting chops went. So I hopefully that one comes back around, because I guarantee that would definitely get the ratings. I just don't.
I think it would be a hit, because I think it would be again, it's unexpected, and the guy is so smart. And it's, you know, whenever you could match someone in a show with their passion. Like, it's one thing for me to say, okay, I came up with a game show idea and I could find 50 different people that I can plug in to be that host, right? And anyone can do it. That show in particular was a show based around his real passion. So very few people could do that show. I couldn't just plug someone in. He came in with a list of like, these are the countries I want to go to. these are the mysteries. Like he was honestly and genuinely fascinated by it. So I think if we would have gotten out there in the world, you would have seen him in a new light. You would have seen him in a different environment than you've ever seen him, and being smart and inquisitive and just fascinated. I think it would have brought him a new level of fans. So hopefully one day.
I really hope that one comes around, man. That would be so fun to watch. All right, we'll wind it down. Adam, this is where I'm gonna kind of turn the spot over to you. I want you to let people know where they can find you, any organizations or charities you may want to plug right now. Basically, the stage is yours right now, just to let everybody know where to find you and what's going on.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Let's see. Well, I'd love it if people can follow me on social media on Instagram and on Twitter. I'm at Mr. Adam Freeman, exactly how it sounds. TikTok, I'm at Mr. Adam Freeman. Facebook, it's Adam Freeman Comedy is my page. I'd love it if people support it and watch the TV shows I make. Right now I have a new season of Mama June is coming out on WeTV. Soon a new season of Marriage Boot Camp, a show I created, is also coming out on WeTV. Bunch of other stuff coming down the pike. When the world gets back to normal again, I'd love to meet some of you guys out at the comedy clubs. Although I'm Los Angeles based now, but I do get back to New York and perform in New York as well. So if you hit me up on social media, you can see me. As far as charities go, I don't have a particular charity, but whenever I do get behind a charity, it's usually all children based. Anything to help kids, underprivileged kids. When I worked with Gene Simmons, we did a lot of work with the Child Fund, which is a great organization. I could plug them, the Child Fund, for kids in underprivileged countries. And the reason I got involved with the Child Fund was because Gene Simmons had done a tremendous amount of research and on companies where the maximum amount of money went actually to the cause. So many of these charities, you find out later, 75% goes to marketing, and 20, Child Fund. I've been to Africa and seen the work that they've done there in these countries. So the Child Fund is an amazing organization, and not charity, but I hope that people continue to support indie people like yourself and these other podcasters out there that are producing content and great content on their own. Sirius XM is amazing. Comedy Central is amazing, but you do not have to go to those platforms, obviously, to find great, people like yourself doing stuff that they're passionate about. So keep finding those podcasts and those vlogs and those people out there. There's a lot of crap, but the good ones rise to the top. And, for every Joe Rogan, there's a Brian who could be Joe Rogan 3 or 4 years from now. So just keep looking out for that great content and for something that speaks to you.
Adam, thank you so much, man. I haven't, I think JJ Whitehead might have been the last one to give me some praise like that, man. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Thanks
Absolutely.
For having me.
All right. I will wind it down. Everybody, you know where to find this. On Twitter, at my name, at Knutson_Brian. You can find the video on YouTube. It's obviously on my name, Brian Knutson. You'll be able to find the audio anywhere you can find podcasts. I will try to actually post a list. I found a list of everywhere our podcast is. And you'll be able to find that at the Scarlet Cream Husker Podcast, obviously on Twitter at the Scarlet Cream. So I will shut it down for now, end this episode. Thank my guest, Adam Freeman, for being here. I want to thank the Killigans as well for giving me permission to use them for my intro music. You guys are amazing. Can't wait to have you on the show. Thank you so much for everybody watching. Adam, thank you for being here. Hope to have you on again soon. Thank you.
Anytime.